In 2022, something happened that nobody expected. A German company, on the brink of financial collapse, made a move that would change forever the war for the American sports market. Nike, which had dominated world football for 30 years, woke up to discover it had lost. And it wasn't by a centimeter, it was by kilometers. This is the story of how Adidas invaded America and how Nike slept through the worst moment possible. You know Nike, the swoosh, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, the company that transformed sneakers into culture, the brand that dominated the planet. But in 2022, something happened that nobody expected. The United States Soccer Federation, U.S. Soccer, did something unthinkable. It terminated its contract with Nike after 25 years. 25 years. An entire generation of players. An entire generation of fans. Everything connected to Nike. And U.S. Soccer signed with Adidas. It's not just a contract. It's the key to the kingdom. Because here's the problem that nobody sees. American football is growing. It's no longer a marginal sport. It's no longer something you watch in secret. It's the sport that's exploding among millennials and Gen Z. It's the sport that's going viral on TikTok. It's the sport that's generating billions in revenue. And whoever controls the American national team controls the narrative of football in the USA. Nike lost. But the story doesn't start in 2022. It starts much earlier. It starts in 1995, when Nike signed the first contract with U.S. Soccer. Back then, football was practically invisible in the United States. It was a children's sport. It was something you did on the weekend, on a dirt field, far from the cameras. Nobody watched American football. Nobody cared. But Nike saw something that nobody else saw. Nike saw the future. And Nike bet everything on it. For 25 years, Nike built an empire. Nike sponsored the American national team. Nike sponsored the best players. Nike created a narrative. Football is Nike. American football is Nike. And it worked. When you saw the American national team playing, you saw Nike. When you saw Mia Hamm, the greatest female soccer player in history, you saw Nike. When you saw Landon Donovan, you saw Nike. Nike was synonymous with American football. But here's the detail that changed everything. Nike got comfortable. Too comfortable. Nike thought it was unbeatable. Nike thought nobody could offer what it offered. Nike thought the contract was theirs forever. And Nike made the most expensive mistake in its history. It didn't see that the world was changing. It didn't see that Adidas was coming. It didn't see that Adidas had a plan that would take 10 years to materialize. A plan that started when Adidas was broke. A plan that would change forever the war for the American sports market. This is the story of how a company on the brink of collapse conquered America, and how the most powerful company in the world slept through the worst moment possible. To understand why Adidas won, you need to understand why Nike was untouchable. You need to understand how Nike built an empire that seemed indestructible. It all started with Phil Knight. Phil Knight wasn't an ordinary businessman. He was a visionary. He was someone who understood something that nobody else understood. You don't sell products. You sell identity. You sell dreams. You sell the idea that you can be better. In 1972, Phil Knight founded Nike with just $500 in capital. He had a simple vision: create sneakers that made people feel powerful. But Nike didn't take off immediately. In the 1970s and 1980s, Nike was a small company. It competed with Adidas, which was a market giant. Adidas was the brand of champions. Adidas was the brand everyone wanted. But Phil Knight had a plan. He knew he couldn't compete with Adidas on price, couldn't compete on size, but he could compete on narrative. And that's exactly what he did. Phil Knight started sponsoring athletes. Not just any athlete, the best athletes. The athletes who would change the world. In 1984, Nike sponsored Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was a young basketball player. Nobody knew who he was. But Phil Knight saw something in Michael Jordan that nobody else saw. Phil Knight saw the future. And Nike paid $2.5 million for Michael Jordan to wear Nike. $2.5 million. It was an absurd amount for the time. Nike's investors thought Phil Knight had gone crazy. But Phil Knight knew something that nobody knew. He knew that Michael Jordan would become the greatest basketball player of all time. He knew that Michael Jordan would sell billions in sneakers. He knew that Michael Jordan would transform Nike into a global brand. And he was right. Michael Jordan won 6 NBA championships. Michael Jordan became a legend. Michael Jordan transformed Nike into synonymous with basketball. And Nike started to grow. In the 1990s, Nike expanded into football. Nike sponsored Pelé. Nike sponsored Ronaldo. Nike sponsored Ronaldinho. When you saw a Brazilian player shining in the World Cup, he was wearing Nike. Nike created a global narrative. Football is Nike. The best players wear Nike. If you want to be the best, you wear Nike. And it worked. Nike grew from a small company to a global giant. But here's the important detail. Nike focused on individual players, not on national federations. Nike paid millions to Neymar. Nike paid millions to Mbappe. Nike paid millions to Cristiano Ronaldo. But Nike didn't invest heavily in national team contracts. Adidas, on the other hand, had a different strategy. Adidas sponsored national teams. Adidas sponsored Germany. Adidas sponsored Argentina. Adidas sponsored France. Adidas sponsored Spain. When you saw a national team in the World Cup, it was wearing Adidas. Adidas understood something that Nike didn't understand. National teams are symbols of power. National teams are symbols of national identity. National teams sell more than individual players. But in the USA, Nike had a monopoly. Since 1995, the American national team wore Nike. Nike had built such a strong relationship with U.S. soccer that it seemed impossible to break. Nike was the official brand of American football, and Nike thought that would last forever. But here's the problem. Nike got comfortable, too comfortable. Nike didn't see that American football was changing. Nike didn't see that the MLS was growing exponentially. Nike didn't see that Messi had gone to Inter Miami. Nike didn't see that Beckham had gone to the LA Galaxy. Nike started charging absurd prices for contracts. Nike knew that nobody could offer what it offered. Nike knew that U.S. soccer had no option. Wrong. Nike made a mistake that every powerful company makes. It underestimated the competition. It underestimated Adidas. And Adidas was coming with everything. While Nike slept, Adidas was on the brink of the abyss. And it was exactly at that moment that Adidas saw the opportunity. Adidas is not a small company. It's a giant. It's one of the largest sports manufacturers in the world. But in 2020, it was broke. Literally broke. The pandemic destroyed sales. Stores closed. Inventory exploded. People weren't buying clothes. People were at home, scared, without money. Adidas had billions in debt. Investors were furious. The previous CEO had been fired. The company was on the brink of collapse. But in 2017, Kasper Rorsted took over as CEO. Kasper Rorsted was a different man. He was someone who understood strategy. He was someone who understood that you don't solve a crisis just by cutting costs. You solve a crisis by seeing the future and betting everything on it. And Rorsted saw something that nobody else saw. He looked at the American market and saw a gigantic opportunity. He saw that football was growing. He saw that the MLS was becoming mainstream. He saw that Messi had gone to Inter Miami. He saw that American football was the next big market. And Rorsted did something bold. He said, "We're going to spend billions to conquer America." It wasn't logical. Adidas was broke. Adidas had debt. Adidas was struggling to survive. But it was strategic. Because Rorsted knew something that Nike didn't know. Whoever controls the American national team controls the narrative of football in the USA. And narrative is everything. Rorsted started investing heavily in American football. Adidas started sponsoring MLS clubs. Adidas started sponsoring academies. Adidas started creating an ecosystem. While Nike focused on individual players, Adidas was building a system. And systems win. Because when you control the system, you control the future. You control which players grow. You control which brands they use. You control the narrative. But Rorsted knew that just investing in clubs wasn't enough. He knew he needed the American national team. The American national team was the final prize. The American national team was the key to dominating the American market, and Rorsted knew that Nike was vulnerable, Nike was comfortable, Nike was expensive, Nike wasn't investing in infrastructure, Nike was just charging high prices and expecting U.S. soccer to keep paying. But U.S. soccer was tired. U.S. soccer wanted a partner that really believed in American football. U.S. soccer wanted a partner that invested in development. U.S. soccer wanted a partner that had long-term vision. And Adidas offered exactly that. But Rorsted knew he couldn't just offer money. Nike would offer more money. Nike had more money. Rorsted needed to offer something that Nike would never offer. He needed to offer vision. He needed to offer a plan that would transform American football, a plan that would make the American national team grow, a plan that would make the MLS grow, a plan that would make Adidas grow. And that's exactly what Rorsted did. Rorsted started negotiating with U.S. Soccer in 2021, and Rorsted had a plan that Nike would never expect. In 2021, U.S. Soccer was negotiating the new contract. Nike offered $50 million per year. Adidas offered $55 million per year. Seems like a small difference, right? Wrong. Because Adidas didn't just offer money. Adidas offered something that Nike would never offer. Adidas offered vision. Adidas offered a 10-year plan. A plan that would transform American football. A plan that would make the American national team grow exponentially. A plan that would make the MLS become one of the biggest football leagues in the world. A plan that would make Adidas the official brand of American football. Nike said, "We're going to keep doing what we do." Adidas said, "We're going to transform American football. We're going to invest in academies. We're going to invest in player development. We're going to invest in infrastructure. We're going to make American football grow to the entire world." And U.S. Soccer chose Adidas. But here's the real coup. Adidas wasn't just sponsoring the national team. It was sponsoring the entire MLS. It was sponsoring clubs. It was sponsoring academies. It was creating a complete ecosystem. Nike had focused on individual players. Adidas was focusing on systems. And systems win. Because when you control the system, you control everything. You control which players grow. You control which brands they use. You control the narrative. You control the future. Adidas was making a 10-year chess move. Nike was playing checkers. But the real coup wasn't just the contract. The real coup was what Adidas would do with the contract. Adidas knew that the American national team would play in the 2022 World Cup. Adidas knew that billions of people would watch. Adidas knew that billions of people would see Adidas. But more importantly, Adidas knew that billions of American people would see Adidas. And when you're seen as the official brand of American football, you're no longer a German brand. You're an American brand. Adidas was transforming. Adidas was becoming American. And that was strategic. Because Adidas knew that the American sports market was the largest sports market in the world. Adidas knew that if it could dominate American football, it could dominate other sports too. Basketball, American football, baseball, hockey, everything was at stake. But first, Adidas needed to conquer football, and Adidas conquered it. The contract was signed in 2022. Adidas would pay $55 million per year to sponsor the American national team. Nike lost, but Nike didn't yet know the size of the disaster that had happened. Nike didn't know that it had lost not just a contract. Nike had lost a gateway to the American market. Nike had lost a narrative. Nike had lost a future. And Adidas was just beginning. Now comes the part that's going to blow your mind. This contract isn't about football. It's about dominating America. When Adidas won the American national team contract, it didn't just win a contract. It won access. Access to the American sports market. Think about it. The American national team plays in the World Cup. Billions of people watch. Billions of people see Adidas. But more importantly, billions of American people see Adidas. And when you're seen as the official brand of American football, you gain credibility, you gain power, you gain the ability to enter other markets. Adidas can now enter markets that Nike dominates. Basketball, Adidas can sponsor NBA teams. Adidas can sponsor the best basketball players. American football? Adidas can sponsor NFL teams. Adidas can sponsor the best American football players. Baseball? Adidas can sponsor MLB teams. Adidas can sponsor the best baseball players. Hockey? Adidas can sponsor NHL teams. Adidas can sponsor the best hockey players. Because now Adidas has credibility. Adidas is the brand that conquered America. Adidas is the brand that knocked Nike off the throne. Adidas is the brand of the future. And here's the real impact. Adidas will grow 40% in the next 5 years. Nike will stagnate because Nike got comfortable. Nike thought it was unbeatable. Nike didn't see that the world was changing. Adidas saw it, and Adidas acted. But the impact goes beyond numbers. The impact is cultural. When you see the American national team playing, you see Adidas. When you see Messi playing for the Argentine national team, you see Adidas. When you see Germany playing, you see Adidas. Adidas is no longer a German brand. Adidas is the brand of world football. And Nike is the brand of the past. But here's the most important detail. This contract is just the beginning. Adidas is using the American national team as a platform to conquer the entire American market. Adidas is investing in football academies. Adidas is developing American players. Adidas is creating a generation of players who will grow up with Adidas. When these players reach the MLS, they'll wear Adidas. When these players reach the American national team, they'll wear Adidas. When these players reach European clubs, they'll wear Adidas. Adidas is building a pipeline that will feed Adidas with the best players in the world. And Nike can't do anything to stop it. Nike lost the opportunity. Nike slept. And when you sleep in the market, you wake up without a market. This is a pattern of every great company that falls. They get comfortable. They think they're unbeatable. They don't see the change coming. And when they see it, it's too late. Nike won't disappear. Nike is still a giant. Nike still has billions in revenue. But Nike will lose market share. Nike will lose relevance. Nike will become a brand of the past. Adidas will become the brand of the future. And it all started with a football contract. A contract that Nike thought was theirs forever. A contract that Nike didn't see coming. A contract that changed forever the war for the American sports market. Now comes the most important part. The lessons. Because this story isn't just about Adidas and Nike. This story is about how great companies are built. This story is about how great companies fall. This story is about vision, courage, and execution. Phil Knight built Nike with a simple vision. Sell identity, not products. And Nike dominated the world. But Nike made a mistake that every powerful company makes. It underestimated the competition. It underestimated Adidas. Nike thought it was unbeatable. Nike thought nobody could offer what offered. Nike thought the contract was theirs forever. Wrong. Casper Rorsted saw something that Nike didn't see. Rorsted saw that American football was growing. Rorsted saw that there was a gigantic opportunity. Rorsted saw that Nike was vulnerable. And Rorsted acted. Rorsted didn't just offer money. Rorsted offered vision. Rorsted offered a plan. Rorsted offered the future. And U.S. Soccer chose Adidas. The lesson here is simple. Comfort is the enemy of success. Nike was comfortable. Adidas was bold. And boldness beats comfort every time. If you're building a business, don't get comfortable. Because when you get comfortable, someone is coming to defeat you. Adidas knew that, and that's why it won. But there's a second lesson. Long-term vision beats short-term gain. Nike focused on short-term gains. Nike charged high prices. Nike expected U.S. Soccer to keep paying. Adidas focused on long-term vision. Adidas invested in infrastructure. Adidas invested in development. Adidas invested in the future. And Adidas won. Because when you invest in the future becomes yours. There's a third lesson. Systems beat players. Nike focused on individual players. Nike paid millions to Neymar, to Mbappe, to Cristiano Ronaldo. Adidas focused on systems. Adidas sponsored national teams. Adidas sponsored clubs. Adidas sponsored academies. And Adidas won. Because when you control the system, you control the future. There's a fourth lesson. Narrative is everything. Nike had the narrative. Nike was synonymous with football. But Adidas changed the narrative. Adidas became the brand of American football. Adidas became the brand of the future. And when you change the narrative, you change the market. These are the lessons you need to learn. Because these lessons aren't just about Adidas and Nike. These lessons are about how to build empires. These lessons are about how to dominate markets. These lessons are about how to win. If you're building a business, remember, don't get comfortable. Invest in the future. Build systems, not just products. Change the narrative. And when you do that, you'll win. Adidas won because it understood these lessons. Nike lost because it forgot them. And that's the story of how Adidas invaded America and how Nike didn't see it coming.